Good evening and welcome to the August 12th, 2024 City Council meeting. I am Mayor Ross and tonight's meeting is brought to you live using video conferencing technology provided by Zoom. Tonight's recording will be posted on the city's YouTube channel. And thank you everyone for joining us tonight. City Clerk Dean, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Benson.
Here.
Councilmember Watton.
Here.
Councilmember Holloway.
Here.
Councilmember Washington.
Here.
Councilmember Cotton. Here. Councilmember Christensen. Councilmember Johnson.
Here.
Mayor Ross.
I am here. Councilor Christensen has requested to be excused. Is there a motion to excuse Councilmember Christensen's absence for this evening?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved by Councilor Watton and Councilor Johnson. Second by Councilor Johnson. Any discussion?
Can we have a full quorum without Councilmember Christensen?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, nay? And Councilor Christensen is excused. Thank you. Council, please stand with me to say allegiance. Well, it's Councilor Watton to please lead the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Our first item is to approve the agenda. Council may I have a motion to approve the agenda.
So second.
This is moved by Mayor Pro Tem Holloway, second by Councilor Washington. Is there any discussion? Seeing none. All in favor of the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? And the agenda is unanimously approved.
He's making us out too.
Tonight we have a presentation regarding the fire department reaccreditation. I will ask Chief Bailey to please come forward and share the good news.
Sounds like it.
Good evening. Just to share with some of what happened last week. August 5th, the delegation from the city, including Mayor Ross, Councilmember Christensen, Captain Fouts, myself, Lieutenant West, and Firefighter Wolf, traveled to Atlanta, Georgia for our accreditation hearing. The hearing was an accumulation of a year's worth of getting ready for a reaccreditation by the Commission on Fire Accreditation International. If you remember, the department was first accredited in 2019, and our initial accreditation was good for 5 years. So in order to maintain our accreditation, the department accreditation manager had to write yearly reports to the commission that outlined our data for the year, went over that, plus also our progress on our recommendations that came out of our first accreditation. During 2023 and 2024, the department began preparing for our reaccreditation. As the commission every year puts out new information or they do a new edition of the FESM, the manual that we put together for our stats and our performance indicators, we had to rewrite. It was a new cycle, so we had to rewrite it from the 9th to the 10th edition. So we had over 250 performance indicators that we had to write to, as well as some new criterion that was established. Each performance indicator is about 1 to 3 pages long and points to criteria that the department needs to be following to be accredited. They're grouped into different categories such as governance, training, safety, health and safety, physical resources, human resources, finances. There's 11 different categories that these performance indicators cover. So we worked on that the last 2 years in 23 and into 2024. And then in April, a team of 4 peer assessors traveled to Snoqualmie and spent 4 days verifying and validating our performance indicators, looking at the department, making sure that all our information was correct. At the end of our visit, the team provided a report to the commission regarding our recommending our accreditation, along with 11 new recommendations for the department. I believe the first time we did it, we had 18 recommendations. This time we had 11 recommendations. Those recommendations talked about the need to evaluate the department's increased call volume and the effect on unit responses and department resources. Talked about updating the city's municipal code in a few areas, creating an outlier policy for our data, evaluating increasing our wildland program and our prevention in the department, as well as updating city policies and procedures, and most importantly, updating the city's strategic plan. Those are just kind of some highlights of the recommendations we received. All were pretty high level. There wasn't anything that was a big red flag. Most of them were things that we can easily work on in the next few years. The one we put our most attention on was updating the strategic plan. That's what we focused on so far. We had a plan to get that to the council by beginning of November. Unfortunately, that was sidetracked a little bit by CrowdStrike and the team not being able to come out to do our strategic plan that we had recommended, the team that we'd recommended to do it. But the good news is we do have a new date and plan. They're going to come out beginning of October. And our plan right now with the scope of work is to have a finished strategic plan for the council to review and vote on the first meeting in December, the December 9th meeting. So back to the hearing in August. If you had a chance to watch the hearing, the peer team leader presented his report. Myself and the mayor were given a chance to speak about our organizations. And then the commission asked us some clarifying questions about our performance indicators and some of the things we were working on. And then they voted unanimously to award our accreditation for another 5 years. But I'd like to take the time just to thank the men and women of the Snoqualmie Fire Department for their hand in this process, as well as the rest of the city staff that provided the information for the performance indicators and also met with the peer team there on site. It was truly a group effort to get to this point. We couldn't do it by ourselves. A lot of the information, as I mentioned, finance, physical resources, it touched pretty much every department in the city. And all were very helpful in getting together the information and helping us with this accreditation process. So it's not just the fire department. Many city departments helped us out with this. Being accredited by the Commission on Fire Accreditation International and the process involved with receiving accreditation provides the department with a proactive mechanism to plan for the future and for the development for the future of the department and identifying areas where we can improve the services we provide. It provides a roadmap, if you will, of where we want to go and things we need to work on to make the department better. So in closing, I just want to thank the council for their support during this process and say that I'm honored to be leading this department forward in our pursuit of excellence and continued improvement, and look forward to the next 5 years of this process and our continued reaccreditation. So part of it is we received a plaque that we'll have hanging up in the fire station. Just like I said, it says it's good for another 5 years for the department for our reaccreditation.
So congratulations to Chief Bailey and Captain Fouts, who is our accreditation manager, and then the Snoqualmie Fire Department for their commitment to excellence. This is an important milestone for our department, and it further elevates our department's commitment to accountability and services for our residents. So nice job. We'll take a picture.
You guys wanna come on up? Oh, I think.
First time I've seen a fire in charge of plaque removal.
So at this time, we'll provide time for residents to comment on items that are not on the agenda. And there will not be online public comments, but written comments are encouraged and may be submitted in person, mail, or email to cityclerk@snoqualmie.gov. So before I read the ground rules, is there anyone at City Hall that wishes to have public comment? Okay, so one second, then I'll read what the rules are. So for this evening, so Snoqualmie residents who are not present have a right to have their elected representatives perform their duties on behalf of city in an efficient, orderly manner. So you have 3 minutes each. Please wait to be recognized. State your name when you get up there and city of residence. And direct comments to council as a whole and not to individual members. So if you want to, go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Steven Sopchak, and I reside in Lake Stevens, Washington. I am the Senior District Manager for Waste Management in our Woodinville operation, North Sound operation that services this beautiful city. After our meeting last week, we did discuss reverting back to our original service as it relates to the truck sizes and some of the difficulties we had in maneuvering the tight alleys and making sure that we were still safe when it came to our service. It was brought to our attention earlier this evening that there were some of our drivers who were leaving oops tags and relocation tags on some of our customers' cans today. We are not going to be moving any customers' cans or location for service without proper channels and communication with the city in agreement. So I will be having conversations with those drivers first thing tomorrow morning to ensure that we are all on the same page. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Han Kirkland from Kent, Washington. I'm the contract manager for waste management. I oversee the Snoqualmie contract. So again, I wanted to reiterate that we are so sorry that this breakdown in communication happened after our meeting last week when we were here. Typically, whenever a driver encounters an unsafe situation, he or she brings it up to their route manager and does what we call a red sheet. And so then the route manager does a survey with them and will make recommendations. And generally they will bring it up to me to draft the letter. And then we review that with city staff who then, will either do a survey or sign off on the letter. And then that's mailed to or dropped off to the resident. So I am really sorry that this happened. And, after last week when we were here, we thought everything was squared away. So, as Stephen said, he'll do some coaching tomorrow and you have my guarantee that this will be taken care of. That was it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in City Hall that would like to do public comment? If so, raise your hand. Right. Seeing none, public comment is now closed. So we move on to the consent agenda, which contains approval of the city council meeting minutes dated July 22nd, 2024, and approval of the claims report dated August 12th, 2024. Is there a motion to the consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
By Mayor Pro Tem Holloway, second by Councilor Washington. Is there any public comment regarding this item? Seeing none, council, do you have any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? And the motion passes unanimously and consent agenda is approved. Next item is committee reports. And the first item is Public Safety Committee, which is the Fire Department Annual Report. Chief Bailey, will you please give us an overview of this item?
Times in one meeting. Banner night. All right. So a couple of weeks ago, I presented our annual report from 2023 to the Public Safety Committee, and they expressed a desire for me to not only provide it to the full council, but just kind of go over some highlights, some things that normally you might not see, things that maybe you're coming across the Public Safety Committee, but the whole council doesn't get a chance. So I wanted to bring this forward, and I'm just going to hit a couple highlights. The whole report was provided to you. If you have any questions at all, please reach out to me and I'd be happy to go over it with you more individually if you have some questions about the report. So the first thing I wanted to highlight was just the responses. And I know it's kind of small there, but we'll kind of talk through it and just let you know where we finished off. So in 2023, we finished with 1,572 instances. Of those, 56 were for emergency medical services. And the chart there that's included, again, like I said, it's kind of small to see there, but the chart tells you about what type of call we go on the most. Obviously, our emergency medical calls are the by far the largest calls we go on. very few of the fire responses. And then at the bottom there, it just kind of shows where we are from the last couple years. You can see that last year, or 2022, again, was our highest so far. It was at 1611. We dropped down just a little bit, 2%, just a little over 2% to 1572 for 2023. The next one is just kind of shows a highlight about where the incidents are during the week and also on the time of day. Most of our calls are going to be on Friday and Wednesday. The lowest amount of calls on Sunday. Can't think of really any statistical reason why that, just based on where they fall. But we do, looking at the time of day, you can see the majority of our instances happen around that 12 to 6 p.m. time frame, the middle of the day. The lowest amount seems to be obviously in the middle of the night when people are sleeping. There is a little bit of a jump about 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, and that's usually when people start to wake up and they start to, feel the aches and pains over the night, or they decide that, maybe what they've been dealing with overnight hasn't gotten any better and they need to call 911. So that's why you kind of start to see that jump about 7 o'clock in the morning, steadily rises throughout the day, and then slowly will go back down again in the evening. Next we have there, I want to highlight, is our property loss and save charts. This is important for the city because this talks about when we do have a fire, how much property we are able to save. That's what we like to focus on, the amount of property that's saved. And you can see that it kind of varies from year to year, and really, it has to do with if we have a fire or not in the city. Luckily, we're very, very fortunate that either we have 0 or just a couple, 1, 2, 3 house fires a year. So that's why when we do have a house fire like we did in 2023 early on in April, we had the fires, the battery fires. You're going to see a large jump in the property, in the loss from the fire, just because there's not a high set of data points to go by, so it looks like a big jump. So our percentage for our percentages saved in 2023 was 84.5%, and again, it usually varies in the 80s to 90s. It really just depends on whether we have a fire or not. The next one that we have there kind of talks about the training that the department does. It breaks down the type of training that we do in the department. Majority of our training is fire training, and that just has to do with, although I just mentioned it is one of our lower call volumes, it is the highest risk for our firefighters. Doesn't happen very often, so high risk. We got to train on it a lot to make sure we're prepared. So you're going to see the fire training be the most, and then followed up by EMS and some of the other things that we're required to look at. The part that I want to point out, though, is at the bottom, we talk about being part of the South King County Fire Training Consortium. This was the decision that the council made through the fire department a couple years ago. I think it's really a win for our department. It gets our crews out. Before we used to do the training ourselves, not to say we didn't put together a good product. I was in charge of the training for quite a few years, but by going out and being part of a larger group, it gives us the opportunity to really focus on certain topics, have those subject matter experts be able to teach these classes, and have our firefighters experience things that they wouldn't be able to if we were just doing in-house training by ourselves. So I just wanted to point out there that being part of that group, being able to have that specialized training, although it does take our crews out of the city a lot of times to do the training, we do have backfill to help cover the city. But I think it's really a win for the department, and the crews have really enjoyed it the last couple of years that we've been able to be part of that South King County Training Consortium. The next one I wanted to point out is our statistics on community risk reduction, and more importantly, just our classes that we're out doing in the community. So we'll just kind of run through some of these. Public CPR and first aid. We had 4 classes, 49 students, 20 contact hours. We're still building that back up from COVID. That's one of the classes that we've slowly been having to get back up going again. We also do public CPR classes, high school CPR classes, where we train over 400 students in CPR, which I think is a really big win for the department. We've been doing that since 2000, I believe, even before the state required all the students to have CPR training as part of their graduation requirements. We were teaching in the school through the health classes. So I think that's a really good thing that we've been able to keep. Stop the bleed, opiate education. These are some of the things that we also do in the department, as well as be involved with a lot of the different community events. As long as we have a crew available, or the volunteers available. We're out for different things, the Easter egg hunt, obviously the pancake breakfast. Anytime we can get out there, show the citizens, the firefighters, let them crawl in the truck, show them where their money's going. It's always a good thing to be visible, as well as help out the other departments in promoting some of these events. Up in the top there, it talks about for 2023, we estimate that we taught over 45 structured classes to 1,433 students for 96 hours in instruction. That's kind of an overall. Obviously, there's probably some in there. It's hard to count. Obviously, when we go to the event that Nicole puts on, the big truck day, you don't have an idea of how many people you actually see. So that's just the numbers of the ones that are the actual rosters that we can count up. And then the last thing I want to highlight is a section where it talks about our volunteer department. Our volunteers play a vital role in the fire department, not only helping provide for responses, transport, but also for picking up some of the slack for the career staff when they're out on other responses. Being able to having the volunteer forces really makes it available for us to be at a lot of these community events, because there's no way that we'd be able to do it by ourselves with the career staff only. So we just have some things I want to highlight there. Total number of duty shifts over the year was 298. Total number of emergency responses they went on was 591. Total number of drill nights was 322. And then the total hours that we put in for community events was 298. And that's, it's down a little bit from where we've been, but numbers, usually we try to keep around 18 to 20 volunteers. Right now we're down at 11, just through attrition, people moving out of the area. Some of our longer volunteers decided to pick it up after many years of service. So they're down a little bit, but again, it's important to put those volunteers out there that, like I said, we couldn't do what we do. Our accreditation, things like that, we wouldn't be able to do without the support of our volunteers. And then the last little section there just talks a little bit about cost analysis, how much the volunteer program costs the department. So I just wanted to highlight, those were the things that I thought were kind of important to point out that we don't normally see. Again, that whole report is included in your agenda packets, and feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions, if something doesn't make sense, or if you want to know more about any of the programs, let me know. I'll be happy to fill in the blanks on those.
Counselor, do you have any questions or comments? Counselor Watton?
Thank you, Chief. Couple things. First of all, I think it's so important that consortium, the training consortium between fire departments, because you rarely fight a fire alone. You have other agencies that come and assist, and vice versa. So being able to train together like that, I had the fortunate opportunity to see some of that in action. And I encourage every council member, when you get a chance, spend some time with the fire department. Secondly, I also want to commend the volunteers. One of them we took away, and it's now on our council. But having 12 volunteers filling in for a cost of just barely over one employee is a huge help for the response times, for giving some relief to the professional firefighters and EMTs. So deeply appreciate the work of this agency, this department, and that we get to have our own fire department locally. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. And just to point out too, we had 4 new volunteers that started last Wednesday night. So we were able to get 4 new volunteers. We thought we had 5. We had to have one, had to wait until next year before she comes on, but we have 4 that are already trained in EMT, and our goal is to have them out on the streets responding to calls within 2 months. That's the goal we put for them. So we're working on getting those numbers built back up to the 18 to 20 that we normally like to keep it at. Well done.
Great. Counselor Johnson?
Yeah, the only thing that stuck out to me, I mean, sorry, I should have started out with, thank you so much. This all looks absolutely amazing. I feel like we oftentimes focus on, okay, but what's the problem, right? But hey, there's a lot to celebrate in this report. All right, so what was the thing that looked a little bit concerning? It could just be that I simply don't understand the data that I'm looking at, or it could be something else, but I thought I should ask about it. When I look at the travel time and response time graph, it reads in descending years, starting at 2023, going down to 2019. And it looks at first glance as though response times and travel times have increased. And at 2019 being at 7 minutes and 15 seconds, if I'm reading this correctly, and then around 10 minutes for 2023, or 11 minutes if we're looking at response time. I mean, that can be a huge, my very limited understanding about how fires work. Those 3 minutes can be a huge difference. So I'm just curious, is this a concerning trend? Is this something that, according to this benchmark thing, again, this is me trying to interpret the graph in my head. I may not be understanding it exactly right, but the benchmark being around 8 minutes for the response time. Right now it's up around 22. Is this a concerning trend that we have some way of addressing? Is it not a concerning trend, etc.?
It is concerning, but the piece that I would like to point out to that is something we've been looking at the last couple of years, and some of this is a graph that we use for accreditation that's required for private accreditation. We've been talking with the peer team about it, and the ways we've been able to explain some of that is in the last 2 years we've changed the software that our dispatch center uses for sending us out. It was changed from one vendor to another, and that caused a lot of problems with the data. So it actually inflated some of the numbers just because one software was using a different, not necessarily a different set of numbers, but they were looking at them a different way. So that was a reason for some of the increase. And the other reason was the way that we crunched the numbers. The previous chief, Mark Herrera, was the one that was in charge of the data, and he had a way of doing it. There wasn't a description of that wasn't left with us. So we've been going through and creating a way, talking to our neighbors and looking at a different way to crunch it. And also looking, I think I mentioned in the accreditation report, looking at having a formalized outlier policy, which takes out some of the numbers. He had a way of doing it, but he didn't write down that outlier policy. So that's another reason why they're just tweaked a little bit, but we are looking at it. We are working on it. The good news is the reason why they're a little bit higher, when you look at the numbers, the majority of our calls are down on the lower end as to response time. It's just we have those outliers that are still in the numbers that are causing it to come up a little bit. But the overall response time in the city hasn't changed, other than just a little bit of those tweaks, kind of trying to get the data covered the way it used to be. So those are some of the reasons why it's gone up a little bit. Also, just because of we have had to move around a lot of our crews in regards to a lot of overtime, a lot of officers working on different crews, and you get that crew cohesion where they work together. We lost a little bit of that in the last couple of years, but those are numbers. We look at them every. I look at them with the officers. We go through and help identify the ones that are out of the norm, address why it was covered, why it's out of the norm, and ways that they can address it. So they're all things that we're looking at. They have trended a little bit upward, and hopefully some of the changes I've made in the last 6 months in 2024, we're going to see those numbers go back down a little bit.
Quick follow-up.
Yes.
Then do these numbers then include, say, if you're responding to a regional event where you have to travel significantly farther? Do these include
the
those?
numbers in that graph are only the city of Snoqualmie.
Okay.
We do look at the response time as a whole when we talk about our numbers, but for accreditation, all the numbers, all the data we use for accreditation only deals with in the city of Snoqualmie. It doesn't deal with mutual aid outside the city. We do include our partners as they come in because they help us reach that response force that's needed. When some of the numbers we track are how long it takes, what's the requirement for having, we look at 17 firefighters on scene for a fire and how long it takes to get in there. That's one of the numbers that we track. So that includes when we receive mutual aid, but we don't put mutual aid going out as part of our data for accreditation or data that would be in that graph.
Thank you.
Any other comments? All right. Seeing none. Thank you for sharing the annual report. Is there any further report from public safety?
No, there is. Thank you.
How about, is there any report from Community Development Committee?
Not at this time, Madam Mayor.
All right. Thank you. Okay, next item, Parks Public Works, AB 24-081, 2025 solid waste contracted adoption. Counselor Benson, would you please read the summary and motion?
City of Snoqualmie's solid waste contract outlines how haulers need to manage solid waste, trash, recycling, and compost within the city of Snoqualmie, and lays out how much it will cost each resident and business. The current solid waste hauling contract with Waste Management is set to expire May 31st, 2025. Request for bid was advertised to 4 solid waste haulers that operate in Western Washington. 3 bids were received, and Waste Management, the incumbent hauler, was identified as the low bidder. Staff recommends approving a 7-year contract beginning June 21st, 2025 with Waste Management. Yeah. The proposed action is a motion to approve resolution number 1694 awarding city's solid waste contract to Waste Management of Washington, Waste Management of Washington Incorporated, and authorize the mayor to sign.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Councilor Benson and second by Councilor Watton. Is there any public comment regarding this item? Seeing none, we have Patrick Fry, project engineer, here to present this item.
Evening, Mayor and Council. Screen. Before I begin, we also have Jeanette Jurgensen online, and she is our consultant with Waste Management, or not with Waste Management, with the contract write-up. So any questions that you guys have, if I can't answer it, she certainly can. Further, we have Waste Management here, so any questions regarding that, they are also here. So hopefully between the 4 of us, we'll be able to answer anything you have. Right. And so, as titled, this is the solid waste collection contract adoption. So this is for what we were hoping to do tonight is really adopt that contract with Waste Management, as well as get a bit of direction as to which alternatives we want to approve in that solid waste contract. A bit of background. The council approved the solid waste collection contract procurement back in February. You'll remember we had a lot of discussion whether we wanted to go out to bid on this, whether we wanted to just go back with Waste Management, or whether we wanted to go through an RFP process. We settled on the RFP making the most sense for us given time constraints. And as such, we released an RFP in the spring, and then we got the haulers bids back, and this is for a new contract starting June 1st, 2025. The existing contract was a 7-year contract with 3 2-year extensions with Waste Management, and the new one would be a 7-year contract with 2 1-year extensions as an option. So that timeline, the way that it looked was back in January and February, we were preparing that RFP documents. That's when I initially introduced the contract to you. In March, we released it to industry review and as well as to council for councilmatic review. Back in April, we released the RFP to the haulers. Bids were due in May. Then for the past few months since we've received the bids, we've been doing contract finalization. That's really like dotting the I's, crossing the T's. The contract as a whole hasn't changed since it went out to bid. So essentially the document that's part of this is what you guys reviewed back in April, or March, I should say, with some minor tweaks here and there that really David Linehan and Waste Management's lawyers really went over. And then again, we're in the council process now, August 2024, and then the new contract starts June 1st of next year. And so really, this contract looks pretty similar to the existing contract. We're seeing weekly garbage with embedded recycling and compostables. We still get the holiday treat collection. Waste Management's still showing up to a lot of the city community events. There's inclement weather recovery schedule. Really, it's a pretty similar contract to what we have now. What is a little different is that the collection trucks must be newer than 10 years old. There is a
discount for low income and senior/disabled residents. Premium dumpster services are now included, like a gate or accessing gates and locks being included as the dumpsters before their additional services or additional fees, as well as unlimited commercial recycling established. And so, as I've mentioned, we received 3 bids, one from Waste Management, one from Public, and one from Ecology. Those are the 3 big names in the game. And Waste Management was the low bid. And the way that we calculated that bid is with estimated service revenues for in annual dollars. And so Waste Management was about 4.5 million. Republic was about 4.8 million. And Recology was about 5.3 million. So really, it was a good spread, and it was all pretty tight spread, with Recology being the highest, and that's about 17, 18% higher than the Waste Management bid. So it was a tight grouping. So we know that we're getting fair competitive pricing in this process.
Counselor Benson?
From a percentage basis, the increase on the Waste Management bid over our current contract is what percentage?
That would be a 50% increase.
It's a 50% increase.
In revenue.
Okay.
Yep, from 3 million to about 4.5.
Okay.
Yep. And so what does that 50% increase in revenue look like in our new contract rate? So the residential 32-gallon garbage cart is $47.58 when the existing contract is going to be $33.44. And you'll see different numbers. I won't read them out for commercial 2-yard dumpsters. Those are the smaller dumpsters that a lot of the small businesses have, and then the 20-yard are the much larger dumpsters. So you'll probably want to know where that stacks up in terms of what other local jurisdictions have. Where does that $47.58 for that residential 32-gallon cart come to? Well, looking at the non-Snoqualmie average, it's about $46.21. So it's a touch higher than the average. And I should say that there's a big asterisk in comparing these numbers because different jurisdictions have different contracts. So that means like unincorporated King County is bi-weekly recycling and compostables. So it's a much lower level of service, as well as there could just be other items in the contract. Some places might require all electric trucks. Some might have softer inclement weather protections. Contracts are all different. So it's not exactly an apples to apples comparison, but there you can see what it is. Really, we're right in line with where we should be. Unfortunately, that means that as the contract stands, it is about a 42% increase on residents' side for that 32-gallon cart and about a 40% increase for that 2-yard dumpster. So if you'll remember, when we were going over the contract back in March, we discussed a couple of bid alternatives, items that we wanted to know what rate change we would get with those bid alternatives. And we limited it to 3 on the contract when going out to bid. And those 3 items was a no cost annual bulky item collection. So that's every resident gets 1 free bulky item collection. Think you could get rid of a couch once a year for free, or a dishwasher, whatever your bulky item is. As of now, in the contract as it stands, those items can be collected, but they're an additional charge. So you could call on, I have a couch to get rid of it. It'll be whatever that rate is for that item. And the different items have different rates. We also looked at every other week compostable collection, pretty self-explanatory. That's a $3.25 savings, as well as seasonal compostable collections, switching that to every other week. So that's just in the winter, switch compostables to every other week, and then the rest of the year, it's every week. And that would be a savings of. So in order to assist making your decision on which alternatives you want to consider, for reference, as of, we're in the 2023 calendar year, 1 bulky items were requested from residents. One individual request to get rid of bulky items for the whole year between the whole city. As far as compost goes, the average weekly compost for residences, this is just single-family residences that we're considering, not multifamily or commercial. It was about 22 pounds per week in compost and yard waste. That comes to about a 95 pound per month average. And the minimum of that was in February, where it was about 66 pounds for the whole month. And the maximum was in May, where it was about 164 pounds for that whole month. And so we are seeing fairly heavy compost usage throughout the year, but there is certainly a peak and certainly a valley. And so really, what I'm looking for tonight is A, deciding whether we want to go with any of those contract alternatives, and then B, move forward with this contract. And that is it.
Mayor Pro Tem Holloway.
Can we go back to the slide where you have the 3 items of discussion? All right, so I'm giving my thoughts at this stage. On the first one, annual bulky fee collection, tell you the truth, at $1.35 per household to get this, and only 21 things collected, we would be spending more money to provide this service than if we left it at the individual house and they just call when they have the bulky items, or they run it up the Rattlesnake transfer station. So I don't really recommend that we go and do that 1 item per year. It's not cost effective for the community to do that under this. Interesting conversation in F&A on the other 2 as far as compostables. Sorry. And when we did this original contract, X number of years ago, I'm not gonna do the math. We actually made sure that every household had a green bin compostable at the beginning of the contract. And we really wanted to encourage the use of that. Matter of fact, we had competitions of who could do the most compost material out of their household on a given month. Mayor was second. Mayor Washington. He didn't win. And I think either one of these options actually are putting an impediment in way of people using that compostable service. We ought to encourage the compostable service and advise them, if you do this, maybe you can get a smaller garbage can or smaller recycle bin and offset the costs that way. But I don't think we should put an impediment in place of compostables. So I turn past both, but.
Councilor Benson.
I'm in full agreement with the no cost annual bulky item collection. I don't think we should, because it's not $1.35, it's $1.35 a month per household.
Yeah.
And it's for 21 items. That's ridiculous. If everybody was doing it, sure, that'd be a good deal, but they're not. Looking at the numbers on how much, where compostables peak at 164 pounds a month in May. Yeah, 164 pounds a month. When we were talking about it in Public Works, that's about 2 green bins. And if we were doing it every other week, then
That's 2 green bins.
it would accommodate the composting that's currently happening on average. I mean, there's certainly houses that do more composting, but I have a feeling that that if we did reduce compostables to biweekly pickup, at least 85% of the people would be fully served by that, which to me, like the bulky items, seems like a huge net gain when you're talking about $3.50 a month over the course of the year. So I would be, I think our citizens would be well served by you know, maybe stamping down their compostables in May. I think that would, you know, because over the course of the year, we're talking about 40 some bucks per household on average.
Counselor Cotton?
Can we go back 2 slides? Oh, the one before that, where it shows the numbers. Yeah. So I think this supports what we were saying about it shows the every other week, the proposed Snoqualmie every other week compostables is only a 33% increase in the rate. Whereas if we go with the service every week, then it's a 42% increase. So I think certainly that the residential customers would find that a bit more palatable as far as with everything else that's, you know, going up in our world. And then, like you said, Councilmember Vincent, if there's people that really work a lot in their yards, you know, they can potentially get extra service too, as an individual. So I concur.
Counselor Washington?
Hey, thank you. Great explanation. I just have a quick question. So looking at the 32-gallon cart rate, so we're looking at approximately a base increase of 40% for the first year. The subsequent 6 years, are they just going to be tied, the increases, are they just going to be tied to like a CPI index?
Exactly, yeah, it's a CPI index as well as the, get the phrase wrong, but it's the King County tipping fee. So whatever, you know, because that's what they have to go.
That's a pass through.
Yeah. Okay. And so they can't just raise rates for fun, or they have to be tied to these metrics that are out of their control, essentially.
Thank you.
Counselor Watton?
Thank you. It seems to me the previous contract, because I've been around long enough, was every other week. But I may be wrong. It just seemed like I put stuff out there and it wouldn't be picked up until the following week, and I wouldn't know which was which. But I have to agree, in my yard, I mean, my bin this week was like maybe a third filled. And I know that like in May, when it's growing season, it's like almost stuffed. But I think that if we take the $3.25, if I understand it, Mr. Fry, that we take that off of the 44.33, puts us down to
You take it from the 47.58. So
47.58.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
So-
44.33, and then we take off the no cost annual bulky
Well,
item.
that one's not in there.
That's not in
Yeah,
there.
yeah,
Not
that
included,
one's
yeah.
not-
Got it. Okay. Okay, so it's the 44.33 is the number we're looking for.
Yeah,
Thank
that
you.
was, the discussion last week made me add this line item of the every other week compostables because it seemed like that's where decision was going to be between the two. And so I added that.
I think at one point it was a combination where it was seasonal, so you didn't have it picking up during the winter, and then it went every other week
That was.
So- in the past. But this is, you know,
That was it.
well, I think the last contract was 2012, so whatever was before that. Counselor Johnson?
Yeah, the other thing about the compostables being every other week versus every week is that some of the HOAs require that the bins be kept inside the house or inside the garage, which after 2 weeks of compost piling up can get a little stinky, especially over the summer when things are sweltering. So I wonder if we could kind of split the difference with the seasonal compostable collection, where we're still providing our citizens with a savings, but on those peak months, they're getting the collection more frequently.
The one, sorry.
Mhm.
The one note that I got is we can certainly, that is a choice that we can make. The haulers, all haulers said the same thing, as well as our consultant said that there are challenges in doing that seasonal compostable in the sense of communication. You know, when does the biweekly compostable start exactly? When does it end? And if you get off that schedule, then now you might go 3 weeks without seeing your compost because you put it out there in a week. And so not saying it's insurmountable by any means, it's just a challenge. And all the haulers pretty much said the same thing. They aren't super excited about it, but they'll obviously do it.
Counselor Benson?
I think also, yeah, you're talking about a $12 savings versus a $39 savings in the two. So it's a significant difference over the course of a year. And I think also, if we do change to biweekly rather than weekly, then, or would it be I don't know. People's habits change with how they engage with their compost bin. If you know that you're going to have, I mean, right now, if you know, that your compost bin is going to be picked up next week, you're going to cram as much into it as you can easily and put it out. If you know that it's only coming every couple of weeks, you might be more thoughtful about how you put, how cutting things smaller, getting a better pack in the compost bin, being more efficient about it. Which I think that in order for us to, and this is a big increase. The overall cost of the contract is a 50% increase. Somehow we've managed, with the way that it's currently written, that the residential rate is about a 42% increase, which I like that 8% difference. I'm not sure how we managed that exactly, but if we can get that down to a 33% increase on the residential rate on that 32-gallon cart, I think that's significant to that's a significant accomplishment. I think that the vast majority of our residents are going to be able to cope with biweekly compost for that kind of savings.
Mayor Pro Tem Holloway?
I guess I'm on counter. I know me, keeping track of the garbage schedule is not high on my list. I know Wednesday night, whether it's this Wednesday or next Wednesday, I'm not going to keep track. I can tell you right now, and I bet a bunch of other people won't either. The other concern I have is, in the winter, we're encouraging people to put food waste, pizza boxes, whatever in this compostable. In the winter, we're going to be putting 2 weeks worth of food stuff out on garbage collection days. And the bear will probably keep track better.
There's already
of the
asleep.
schedule.
There's
No,
already sleep.
no, I've had them come Christmas Day.
It was really
I have
hungry.
I have pictures of the footprints in the snow. Fortunately, I have a cat, so they didn't think mine was all that great. But they will come down the alley and they will be looking for this stuff. So I'm not hard over. I just want to bring up the point. I mean, you do have a wildlife issue potentially with a 2-week collection
And locking
increase.
cans. Locking.
So Councilor Washington?
Yeah, I kind of tend to agree with that piece of it. And it's just that, I'm thinking about kind of my lifestyle as it relates to compost, and we have a service come in for the yard. I don't even know if it's full or not until Tuesday morning when I get up and take the garbage out. And I look at it and I'm like, oh, it's full. I need to take it to the corner. And so, can I do a better job of managing it and having that conversation with the service? Maybe. I mean, it's something that I really don't have. When we get into kind of the seasonal things like spring, and then we get into the fall season, I mean, it's literally full almost every week. And so I wake up like I said, that Tuesday morning, it's full. I gotta take it out.
So we had Councilor Benson. Do you still want to speak?
Well, yeah,
And then Councilor Johnson.
To the animal concern, I think that this is actually helpful because to the animal problem, because it actually cuts in half the opportunities that animals have for going after compost, if we're only putting it out every 2 weeks, right?
Is that to respond to that?
Oh, can I respond partially?
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Holloway?
Well, and it's yes, no. There are some areas within the community where it is not feasible for them to store this inside. You also have a large part of the community where they just don't. Okay, whether the ROA says in their particular area or not, they don't. I mean, I have no place to do it. My garage is attached, so I'm bringing in 2 weeks worth of rotting food into the house. Okay, so I do keep it fenced off where it's safe, but we've all seen the pictures. If they smell it and they want it, no fence is gonna stop them. But again, there are parts of the community where it's not feasible to do inside storage. There are parts of the community where it just doesn't happen. So you're still, I don't see this reducing the wildlife opportunity.
Counselor Johnson?
Yeah, I was actually just thinking about something that was kind of a response to the seasonal compostables is, well, if you miss a week and you're looking at 3 weeks, well, oh my goodness, if we do every other week and I miss my one chance, then we're looking at a month
You're on
worth of
vacation.
stuff
Yeah.
that's going to be sitting there sweltering in the garage. And that doesn't sound very pleasant. I'd pay them the $40 or whatever the difference is to come out and just take it, please, after 3 weeks or whatever, rather than waiting the 4. We had Snowmageddon a few years ago, was it 2019 or whatever, where we went like a month without any service because we had 4 feet of snow in our driveway. That was awful, very extenuating circumstance. But now we're talking about the possibility that that could be a more recurring thing, at least with regard to compostables, and that makes me less likely, certainly, to use the compost if I have that fear. I mean, if I'm traveling, I miss that 1 week, or if I get my schedule. Oh, I forgot to put it out. Oh, now I gotta wait again for another 2 weeks. That just sounds horrible. And I think our residents would be fine with paying that extra amount to not have to have their compost sitting there for a month in that event.
So Patrick, are you looking for direction tonight on this particular item? Okay,
Direction on everything.
on everything. So we got Counselor Cotton and then Counselor Benson.
So we do have blocking cans for wildlife issues that residents can get if that's a big problem. But I also think we need to give our residents credit that they should be able to keep track of when their trash goes out or when their compostables goes out. And I mean, that's just part of life, you know, so I think that people are certainly capable of dealing with that.
Counselor Benson?
How many single-family residences are there in Snoqualmie?
Over 4,000.
Over 4,000? So 4,000 times 40 is, it's a bunch.
Higher than I can count.
All right, that's what is that, 16,000?
160.
Is that $160,000? $160,000 cheaper. I hear your concerns, but I'm not willing to pass up on the residents saving $160,000, even if it means, if I accidentally miss a week and have to figure out my compost. That's a lot of money. That's a huge savings. And going from 42% to 33%, that's a healthy chunk to bite off that increase.
One question, there was blocking cans that was mentioned. So are there locking cans for the compostables as well as the garbage?
They're an additional service.
But they should be for.
They cost $325 a month.
Yep. That is actually right.
Is it only garbage, or is it compostable, or is it both?
It's both. Is what I think.
Okay.
So it'd be $6.50 then if you had, so per can, right? Garbage $3.25. and then
Jeanette, can you
compostable
jump in and
$3.25.
clarify whether that's I'm seeing the $3.25 locking, unlocking garbage compostable cart per month. Is that per garbage or is
It's actually $6.40 for the wildlife resistant cart per month, and that includes the specialized cart as well as the locking and unlocking. So that's a per month per cart cost of $6.40.
Counselor Johnson,
Um,
thank you.
Thank you.
Another thing that perhaps could address our little log jam here is there's a mention of a senior discount of some kind and disabled discount. How much was that, and what's it take to qualify, et cetera?
It's a good question. Jeanette, do you know that off the top of your head what the qualifications are? Because I certainly do not.
The qualifications for the garbage discount will match the city utility discount. So whatever you currently offer, Waste Management will match that. So if it changes at all on the different incomes, this will be matched exactly.
Staff happen to know how much that is?
Do you want it or don't you? I'm, so
No, no, no.
I'm curious.
Mayor
the
Pro Tem
direction of the
Holloway?
question. Sorry.
Counselor Johnson,
Yeah, so the reason I ask is this concern about how much the increase is, that wouldn't be for all of our citizens, especially those perhaps that are likely to be on fixed incomes. They may not see that large of a jump. So I was curious what that would be. It's okay if staff doesn't know off the top of their head, but I was just curious if they do.
Counselor Washington.
Yeah, I guess I would also at this point that I totally see the savings with exactly what you're saying, Councilmember Benson, and I totally agree. The other side of it is there's a pretty substantial increase if you do end up needing the service weekly. So then, you know, what would kind of be the difference there in the delta? Will we really be saving as much as we think we'd be saving if others are having to go out and pay for this other monthly service, at least during the peak seasons, right? The spring and the fall.
What were the costs for additional compost pickup?
$8 for an additional compost weekly service. So if we switch to bi-weekly, it's not going to be $8 on the nose, just because that number is going to have to be negotiated with Waste Management, because that $8 was set as weekly service. So switching to bi-weekly service, it'll change a little bit, but $8 is a good ballpark
Per month
per month.
to add would that add a cart? Or
Additional cart.
an additional cart?
For bags, right? You buy the
You can also do
bag,
bags. Yeah, you
and
can
that's
also do-
still that amount, right?
Let's see, bags are $6.50 each.
But that's it. Counselor Benson?
For someone who needs more than one cart a month, that $8, so that $8 works out to $96 a year, right, across the 12 months. And the percentage of people that would need that would be, in my opinion, significantly lower than the percentage of people that would be perfectly served by semi-weekly pickup. So I think the net savings would still be enormous. You're right. I don't think it would end up being, if you factored in the people on the low income discount and you factor in the people who are paying the extra, it wouldn't be the full $160,000 across the 4,000 single family residents, but it would still be a very significant segment of that.
So there's a question about discounts. Did you have the utility discount? 30?
30%, correct.
Wow.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Holloway?
But they got that 30% before, they'll get it after, and then it'll go up 40%. So, I mean, but other question to your point of the amount of services by pound to a household. I guess the metric's somewhat wrong in this conversation due to the fact that the individual household has the opportunity to adjust their bin size and their fee that they do if the current service is too much for them. Okay, so I don't want to actually reduce service. They have the opportunity to reduce service. Take that out of the picture. We're back to then is do we want that yard waste and food stuff out there for at least 2 weeks before pickup? Or do you want it out? Do you want to encourage composting and recycling or not? If a household feels they're getting the charges for those things are too much, they should reduce their bin size. They have the power to do that.
Right, but the bin size doesn't
Counselor Benson?
have any effect on, the compost doesn't have any effect on your bin size. Your bin size isn't for compost. So this is a way for residences to save money on the compost portion. It's not, if I get less compost pickup, it doesn't affect my garbage can at all.
Think it if, well,
Mayor Pro Tem Holloway?
Well, for clarification, there are separate compostable bin sizes as there are for trash, and each one of those has a separate monthly rate.
Yep.
Okay, so
Yes,
yes, you yourself
right.
can control how much you're paying by reducing your bin size. If you're getting a bin that's too big and you're paying that, by all means, you should reduce your bin size.
Sorry, for clarification, my understanding is that trash, that bin size is, you determine the cost on that bin size. So it's 20-gallon garbage cart is $36 in the new contract. 32 is the number that you're seeing, et cetera, going up. Compost and recycling,
Is this,
it's the
For
same.
everybody.
Yeah, so you can get,
it doesn't have any effect on the cost of the service. You're paying for your garbage.
So the,
That's true? All right,
Counselor
I
Washington?
misinterpreted some
yeah,
lines.
so,
All right, I stand correct.
okay. No. I just wanted to clarify that, because that's kind of what I understood, that, yeah, the compost and the recycle are included, if you
get the
will, right?
96-gallon
right.
cart.
You're only paying for this size of your garbage cart. So, which we actually reduced to a 20-gallon. So, because we don't, yeah, a little one. So, I mean, that serves us well.
Okay, is there any other comments or questions regarding these three options?
So do we-
Well, sorry.
Counselor Washington?
Yeah, I do have one more question. So, in regards to the compostable cart, can you increase the size of the compostable cart? So the default size is 20-gallon,
96.
96.
That's the big one.
Okay, I don't have that one. I have the. Okay. Okay. So just to be clear, are you saying that the compostable cart will resemble whatever your garbage cart is?
No,
Okay.
No, exactly. You can request a larger compostable cart if you'd like.
Okay. So for example, even though I have the 20-gallon garbage cart, I could request, was it 32-gallon?
96.
Or 96, the big one.
96 is the max. Is
Okay.
maxing out, so
Okay. Okay. So then in essence, I'm just saying, if we decided, okay, we're going to go on I'm sorry, just a quick follow-up.
Yeah, follow up.
If we decided we were going to go to this bi-weekly schedule, potentially if I decided to go with the big one, the 96, I can squeeze more things in effectively.
You can put a body in there.
Well, but I guess I'm not under the pressure that I am now to make sure that I get it out on the curb every week, because I'm afraid that it's going to overfill for the next week, especially in the peak seasons, the spring and the fall. Does that make sense? Okay. Okay.
City
Okay.
Administrator.
Thank you.
Chambliss?
So one other point that was made at the committee level that hasn't been brought up is that the heavy users do have an option to order a second cart.
Sorry, quick follow-up. At no charge, no additional charge.
No, it's
$8 a month.
$8 a
$8
month
a month.
as it stands. It's gonna change a little bit if we go to every other week, just because that $8 is negotiated at weekly service, so. $8, but that's a good.
Before.
Counselor Johnson?
So the size, it sounds like, isn't perhaps as big of an issue either way, because you could always get a bigger bin or another bin or bags or whatever it is. Again, my concern is the time that I and other residents would have food rotting in their garage, stinking it up.
Yeah.
You know, if I go on a vacation on the week where they're going to do the pickup, then, you know, sure, maybe I am missing a little bit of that time of accumulating stuff while I'm gone. But otherwise, yeah, I'm filling it up for the better part of 4 weeks. And that just does not sound very appealing. And I don't know if there's an option to request per resident for a more frequent pickup. Probably not, because they have to send the whole truck out, but yeah, but that sounds very undesirable to me. I mean, honestly, what I do is I just start throwing my food in the regular trash to get rid of it. So that's just going to increase my trash, filling up the landfill even faster, which is already getting pretty big as it is. Yeah, that's where I land on it.
Mayor Pro Tem Holloway?
So see if we can get this closure. Move to not put into the contract the bulky item collection once per year per resident.
Check.
Is that it?
Yeah, he seconded.
Okay,
I moved, he seconded.
so it's been motioned by Mayor Pro Tem Holloway, second by Counselor Johnson, to not include the bulky item option in the contract. Any discussion?
Aye.
Seeing none?
I
All in
concur.
favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Holloway? So it's unanimous and we will not have that included in the contract. Next item, Mayor Pro Tem
I
Holloway?
will state this in the, I guess, affirmative. Move to accept the contract at every other week compostable collection.
Seconded.
So it's been moved by Mayor Pro Tem Holloway, second by Councilor Vincent, to accept every other week compostable in the contract. Any further comments or discussion? Councilor Vincent?
I think people are going to be very disappointed if we don't take advantage of this savings. I think people are going to get bitten by the cost increase for waste, and I think they'll be disappointed if we miss this opportunity.
Councilor Johnson?
I think people also are very environmentally conscious in this area, and they'll be disappointed to see us filling up the landfill with more stuff that more people will probably put in the trash rather than their compost.
Okay, any further comments? Otherwise, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, nay?
Nay,
Nay.
Uh-oh,
you break the tie.
I do break the tie.
It's the first one?
No, I think I've done it before.
Okay.
I think there's like one, yeah.
So I vote nay.
Okay,
So
we'll have every week.
4, yeah. 4 against, so the motion does not pass.
Okay.
Right, Mayor Pro Tem Holloway?
Doesn't mean I don't want to save money. We
I'm
have,
going to do it.
we have another item on here. Actually, 2 other items, but I'm only gonna pick on one. There are 2 other fees on here. There's a utility tax, which is a tax, and we have what we call an administrative fee that is on this that will generate, it also will go up 40% and align with the contract. I don't believe and I believe what we call things is important. It is our commitment to our electorate of why we're doing this. So we ought to hold ourselves accountable to what we call it. And it is called administrative fee. It's not a tax. Okay. But my question is, do we have to, do I have to deal with that tonight, or can we take time to look at it? And if we want to make a change of the administrative fee later after the contract is already approved?
Yes, we can change the administrative fee yearly. And the taxes are a city code.
Only yearly?
I believe yearly by September is what we agreed to. And that's not this coming September, that's next September, so that we don't want to be changing administrative fee left and right. Just it'll just confuse the contract, and so we have it set so that you can change the administrative fee every September, so that by the new year you can communicate with the residences that the new fee is coming out, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, but that means it's gonna be 18 months. I can't
Well-
do that.
I want to let Jeanette speak just to, because that's, once the contract is adopted, and the intention for every January that the new administrative fee would come up, but with new contract adoption, June 1st, that might be different. So I want to see if Jeanette has any comments on that.
Thank you. Yes, what Pat said is, in the normal years where we have the King County and the CPI increase starting in January, the city would need to let Waste Management know by September if you want to change it. Because your contract is starting in the summer, you actually just need to let them know about 4 months ahead of that. So in January or February, the council can change that administrative fee for the beginning of the new contract, which starts on June 1st.
Okay, so
If you want to hash out the administrative fee until this coming.
okay, good. I do want, again, it's administrative fee. I don't think it should go up just a flat 40. It probably should go up in alignment with our cost of labor increases or CPI or whatever. So I would like to take that back to FNA and have that discussion, but I don't want to hold up the contract tonight. If you're all in agreement that that's okay for us to take that up in FNA. Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, we'll add that to the agenda. Thank you. Any other comments or things we're supposed to consider before we
I
vote?
think just a motion to approve the contract as it stands.
Motion to approve the contract with Stan with the ability to change administrative fee before February of next year.
Second.
That's already part of it, right?
Hmm?
That's already part of the contract, though.
It's part of the contract, but we can change it 4 months to start of contract, which would be
Okay.
February.
Okay, so it's moved by Mayor Pro Tem Holloway, second by Councilor Washington to approve the contract as it stands, but have the option to change administrative fee by
Oh, so let's just say January.
January.
So approving the contract as it stands would mean be approving the language that says you'll adjust the fee by September 1st of each year. So if you're going to change the language of when the fee gets adjusted, I think that's a change that Waste Management would also have to agree to for there to be a meeting of the minds on the contract. So if what you're saying is you want to consider it by February, or to change it by the following September, I think that's consistent with the contract. If you're saying you want to have until February to change it for all of 2025, I think that would be inconsistent with the language as it's currently written.
I believe I heard something. I understand and I agree with your legal. I heard something different from the consultant. Help me understand that difference. Jeanette? What is my window to change administrative fee before this contract takes effect?
I am reading the contract language. Currently, there's wording in the contract about the CPI adjustment for the initial period, which the rates will be set by January of 2025. And the contract is silent on the change in administrative fee. It is something that is done, but it is, you're correct that it is not in the contract that it can actually be changed. It just references to align with the annual rate change.
Thank you. City Attorney Linehan.
So in, excuse me, in section 7.3 of the contract, compensation to the city, the 1, 2, 3, the fourth paragraph says that the city shall notify the contractor of the new administrative fee for the following year by September 1st. And then the contractor shall itemize and include the appropriate adjustment. Blah, 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 blah.
So if we were just to add with initial administrative fee to be defined by January of 2025, that would then give us time to do that?
You couldn't sign the contract before then unless Waste Management agreed to change that language. So, I mean, they may not be wanting to negotiate that here in the council meeting tonight. I don't know.
No, and that's why I just.
Yeah.
I mean, we had options we're talking about putting in and out. So we were talking about changing the contract somewhat tonight for that final negotiation.
You're talking about picking one of the existing options. Yes. This is something new.
So
Right.
I, again, move to amend the contract to have initial administrative fee defined by January 2025. May I have a second?
Second.
It's the same motion you just did before, because we already have a first and a second.
I'm actually suggesting amending the contract.
Right, so you need to pull the other one.
Please pull the other.
You still have
Yeah,
that
the other one
motion on
doesn't
the-
work. I withdraw the original motion as it's non-feasible.
So then I have to withdraw my second to that one.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you. Good point.
So now we are amending the contract. So we can change administrative fee by January
Initial
2025.
administrative fee by January 2025.
That would, and your goal is to be in effect starting June 1st, when the contract starts.
Contract starts June 1st,
Starting
2025.
it to be in effect with the start of the new contract service.
And there was a second by Councilor Washington. We have Councilor Benson.
I believe Mr. Boutte spoke to the administrative fees at the Parks and Public Works meeting, and I would like to hear what he has to say about the impact of us fiddling with them.
But point of order, the reason I'm doing it the way we're doing it is so that we
Mayor
have
Pro Tem?
that conversation in committee. We have time for that.
What is your point?
Okay.
Point of order?
Yeah.
What was it?
That the reason I'm putting it, I have not motioned any change to administrative fee, only that we have a window under which we can do the analysis and have that discussion of what the appropriate fee should be. I think that conversation is to come and should occur in committee and then come back to council. Having him initiating the discussion right now, we'll just redo it in committee. But go ahead.
Sorry about this. Got back. So thank you, council. Good evening tonight. We did indeed have a conversation about the administrative fee in the F&A committee. I'm going to share my screen with everyone here. You know, it's probably no surprise to everyone that I have a presentation. So, so we'll be engaging in that process here tonight. So just to kind of provide some background, the administration is recommending approving a contract with Waste Management to provide comprehensive garbage, recyclables, and compostable collection services between June 1 of 2025 to May 30th of 2032. The approval of the contract is not expected to increase city expenditures. However, the contract is expected to increase two important general fund revenue sources, as Mayor Pro Tem cited. Both the solid waste utility tax, which is charged at 9%, which from our estimates would equal roughly $80,000 for 2025. The increase would, plus an additional $160,000 for 2026. In addition to that, associated with this contract is a solid waste administrative fee of 10.7% as proposed in the contract, which would result in an increase of our solid waste administrative fee revenue of roughly $70,000 for 2025, and then $140,000 for 2026. The F&A committee asked a question, a pretty important question, which is what has been the change in the city's administrative costs over time to manage the contract? And I will admit that this is a pretty challenging question to answer, and it's challenging because the city does not have a specific account or a set of accounts where the city has charged administrative costs to over time to manage the contract. And so collectively, there's multiple people involved in the process of actually managing the contract itself. And so the goal for me over the past couple of days has been to look more broadly over several categories to give a sense of the change, especially if the solid waste administrative fee has increased at the rate of inflation plus population change. And so I've looked in three categories: general administration, which includes executive, legislative administration, city attorney, city clerk, finance, communications; public works administration, as well as street maintenance too, because a lot of the funds that we do collect also would be utilized to support our street maintenance activities, because we do know that the garbage trucks that roll around in our community do have an impact on the roadway system as well. And so with that said, as part of the methodology, I started looking back in time since the initial award of this initial contract back in 2012, and noted that our general administration expenditures between 2012 and 2013 increased at an average annual rate of roughly 6.82%. For those playing at home, I do have a equation here as well. That's actually, to me, very important, because developing a linear model behind this, because there is volatility in these expenditures over time. And so slope is also important. A lot of this is on my finance bingo card, by the way, so I've been able to check that off of things in terminology that you never really want to say in front of council, but I will anyway. So with that said, in addition to that, in terms of the public works administration, our average annual percentage change has been roughly 2.09% over time. As you can see, during the COVID years, that kind of dropped off. And then we now have just kind of started backfilling a lot of the positions for public works administration. And then street maintenance as well. The average annual percentage increase for us internally in terms of our expenditures has been roughly 2.76%. When you compare that with other comparison factors, for example, inflation over that period has increased roughly 3.32% based on the CPIU for the Seattle-Tacoma Bellevue area. Our population has increased at an annual clip of roughly 2.25%. And if you're to combine both measures, both inflation and population, that has increased roughly 5.62% annually. And so as a result of that, you can see that our parks, public works administration and street maintenance as well hasn't increased at the rate of change of inflation or population as well. So we've been keeping those expenditures relatively flat in comparison to what you might expect when it comes to inflation and population over time. So, I tried to take things one step further when it comes to this. And so I started to compare the 2023 actual expenditures with an expenditure forecast based on a combination of inflation and population increases experienced since 2023. And so in the second column there, you have 2023 actual expenditures. In the next column after that, 2023 estimated expenditures. That's a forecast based on inflation and population since 2012. And I would just note the differences between that. So for general administration, we've spent $4.04 million in 2023, when we might expect, based on inflation population, to have spent $3.74 million, which means we're roughly $300,000 above what we might have forecasted in 2012 based on inflation population. For Parks and Public Works Administration, we're under by about $193,000, and for street maintenance, we're under by about $643,000 for a total difference of $536,000. In addition to that, I did work from the linear model, because as I stated, there are fluctuations that we have to kind of deal with, and so that provides me with a nice smooth line. The difference for all three areas increases to roughly a difference of $742,000. So if we were in 2012 and we knew exactly how our inflation was going to increase and our population was going to increase over time, we'd actually have roughly $742,000 more now annually, basically, to support our street maintenance and public works administration, general administration overall. What this leads to is probably not a lot. Because it is very hard to parse the data overall. We can't really separate what work we've done to support the contract. Other larger cities will have a team devoted to managing the solid waste contract, and that's just not practical for us at a smaller city size. But what I do want to share is we do know, and we have seen this chart very frequently in the past overall. We do know that in the general fund, which is where the solid waste admin fee goes into and supports for the most part, that we do see our expenditures increasing at a faster pace than our revenues. This is a revenue source that increases generally at the rate of inflation, or CPI for the most part. And so if we're worried about our expenditures increasing at the rate of inflation, this helps to provide that kind of protective measure that we've been leaning into for the past year. Certainly the public safety sales tax was a component of that overall. And we've been developing our strategies in order to make sure that we can keep up with the rate of inflation over time, which is why we feel, I think administratively, that this is a critical revenue source. Now, it's been brought up, and it's a very important point as well, that we can change this administrative fee annually. So certainly we could reduce it, right? But then we can also come back to you at a later date and actually come back and seek maybe an increase in that. So it is one of those options within our toolbox that we can pull out if we need to, if the time is necessary or if the time's right. So that flexibility, I think, is really key and will be in our toolbox moving forward if we do see these lines crossing sooner than we had anticipated. But right now, we've been dealing with a lot of this kind of work over this year at this point. Certainly the TBD sales tax, the public safety sales tax, this would certainly help to push that curve out. And from our perspective within the finance department, it's important to kind of consider that itself. So with that said, the solid waste administrative fee is roughly, just for a point of comparison as well. The average annual change, I actually just a couple hours ago, the average annual percentage change has been roughly 3.37% over time. It is roughly $300,000 annually. So if we see our administrative expenses roughly $4 million, or public works admin $1 million, or street maintenance roughly $1.5 million, certainly $300,000 at this point is not enough to cover, the vast majority of that, right? It's probably under 10% of the total that can fund, a lot of those activities. And so it's just kind of one lever that's available to us. And so I'd recommend that council really consider deeply any sort of action in the future.
Mayor Pro Tem Holloway.
So the logic drives us to, is it the administration's intent to put administrative fees on every revenue and service we have and to increase those administrative fees to close the funding gap? Okay, again, what you call it is important. This is administrative fee. If it is administrative fee, I do not believe this cost has raised by 40%. It has raised more along with the inflation and the labor costs we have, and we don't look at it like that. I'm not proposing we slap administrative fees all over the place to try to address the issue. And it is an issue that structurally cities cannot keep revenue with expenses. Real estate tax is the vast majority of what we get, and it is limited 1% a year. And I challenge anybody to go find a time when inflation was 1%. Okay, I agree that that's there. But again, this is an administrative fee, not a tax. It is something different. If we're concerned about the costs that we're giving back to people through this waste contract, this is one I think ought to adjust based on what potentially our administrative labor costs and other costs may have been versus let's just jump at 40% with the rest of the contract. But again, I think we ought to have that discussion in committee. I don't think we need to settle that out tonight.
Now that you've said everything that you want to say.
Well, I just didn't want to go here. I wanted to do it in committee, but you
Forced his hand.
you forced it.
Councilor Johnson.
Okay, so with the proposed on the table, may I do a two-parter question?
Okay, yeah.
All right, so first part is, with the current motion that's on the table, would that, if adopted by council, require for waste management to go back and agree to this change?
City Attorney Minahan, yes.
Thank you, Mayor. So right now, what would have to change in the contract is it says that the administrative fee will be 10 7/10%. So I don't know that Waste Management really cares what we
it's a
set that
pass-through.
number at. But the process for how you change it, if this is just going to be a change to the first year's administrative fee, then I don't think they care at all. And if we say that that's what it's going to be, I'm sure if you approve the mayor to sign the contract tonight, they probably would sign it next week as well. But if we're going to change the process for how it gets changed, then I think that's something that they may care about because that affects their internal billing, invoicing, all that sort of thing, and projections. So like I said, what would have to change under the current agreement is you'll have to tell them what number to put in this contract other than 10 7/10%.
Well,
Mayor Pro Tem Holloway.
careful, because the motion on the table was merely to add words in there that we would set the initial fee by no later than January.
Correct. And so between now and January, you'd have to decide what that number is. Is it 10 7/10 or is it some other number?
So, and remember that base motion. This whole conversation we just had is interesting, but not necessarily germane to that base motion, except that's a related subject. Do you want to have time to have this conversation? Or do you want to try to make this decision tonight on what that administrative fee should be? Or forego any discussion whatsoever? Those are your three options. I've tried to give us time to have that conversation and time limited it to January. That's the motion.
Councilor Watton and then Councilor Johnson.
Well, I'm not a person that gets that likes anything associated with fees and taxes. However, I think in this context and how important any revenue is to the city to sustain our level of services without throwing a monkey wrench into the services, I'm a little bit concerned about doing that now. I think that we have a reasonably good contract before us, and it helps us have certainty over the number of years of the service. When you think about it, these contracts originally used to be handled internally by most cities, and then they went and started outsourcing it. It gets very tricky to move from one provider to another in the investment they need to make in the equipment. That's equipment we don't have to as part of our capital outlay. And while I appreciate everyone's concern about making sure that it's feasible and doable for residents, I think in this one instance, I'd rather go ahead and sign the contract. We can take a look at fees and other things on a different time schedule, but I do not want to jeopardize the contract and moving on with the city's business.
Councilor Johnson, did you?
I have something separate, but I'll wait to see if the rest of the council has anything to respond to Councilmember Watton first.
Mayor Pro Tem Holloway.
Again, as the attorney told us, I don't believe this jeopardizes that contract with Waste Management. The administrative fee is a pass-through from them to us. So this is what we are charging the citizens on for garbage pickup. We can choose to just let it float or take some time to consider what it should be. And the wordage gives us time to do that consideration. But other than that, it has no impact on the overall contract.
Any other comments? Councilor Johnson?
Only other thing I wanted to ask a clarifying question was where it says the city shall notify the contractor of the new administrative fee for the following year by September 1st. Is that something that just the administration does, the numbers, and then they send it over? Or is that something that involves the council by September 1st of, I believe, each year?
So by default, it'll just stay the same. we're not gonna have that discussion every year unless council, wants to have that
Got it.
discussion.
Okay, thank you.
More than Happy to have it every year, but
But if there's a contract change, it comes back here.
exactly.
Thanks.
Okay, Counselor Benson?
Yeah, from what I've heard, I don't think a 10.7% administrative fee is exorbitant for what we're getting in return. However, that being said, I don't have any problem with us discussing it between now and January.
Counselor Cotton?
As long as this doesn't preclude us from going forward with the vote on the contract, which is the main business at hand here, I would really like to see us take care of this.
Well,
City Attorney Linehan?
it effectively does because you don't have a finalized contract if that term is still to be determined. So all you'd be doing is by approving it tonight, you would be saying, well, we're good with everything else except for this one term, which we still have to figure out. So that's not really approving the contract tonight if you do keep that open.
Mayor Pro Tem Holloway?
But we started this whole conversation talking about options on the contract to begin with. So I'm confused now that we seem to be arguing that this was going to be the final discussion on the contract tonight and be done with it. And no options were really to be considered, when the whole point of this conversation tonight was to consider options. Even before I stirred the pot on this little thing.
City Attorney?
So the options were negotiated with, they were agreed. You can have option A or option B or option C. You pick, they're good with it. This is actually changing something that hasn't been previously. I mean, I don't know that they're willing to hold this contract until January. Maybe they are. I don't know what their planning period is or from the city. It may be sooner than that. I don't know. We haven't had that discussion. This is all new for tonight. So that's why I'm trying to be a little bit cautious about saying, oh yeah, you can just approve the contract, because I'm not sure that they will accept it. So.
You could leave it at the 10.7%, and then you, of course, have the option by next September to change it for the following January. So you're going to have 7 months that would be at this percent in the new contract. Would you like that? And that would be in line with the contract. Counselor Johnson?
Yeah, I think I'm at a point where I very much appreciate the intent of the motion. But I just have that fear of the risk that it could put to the rest of the contract, since Waste Management isn't jumping to the microphone to say, yes, we'll take that deal. So at this point, I think I'm going to land on the other side of this one. But again, I very much appreciate the intent of it.
Mayor Pro Tem Holloway?
Does the contract wordage of when we can do it, is that September 1 or just September?
The contract says September 1, but until you have an approved contract, it doesn't matter what it says. So.
Well, no. That's for the year coming. Okay.
Correct.
Well, I mean, I guess my question was, can we have this conversation in September this year and still be in compliance with the contract for having it go into effect June of next year?
I think the answer is if you approve the contract as written, you would have to notify them by September 1 of any change that's going to go into effect the following year.
What's in our current contract? And right now we're negotiating. I mean, it's going to be different from January to end of May. That's our current contract.
Administrative fee is going to be this same. I'm not sure if we can change it on September 1st. I just don't remember what our previous or our current contract says. But by default, it'll be the 10.7%. And then, so that wouldn't change. And then in January 1st, the rates go up by CPI and the tipping fee adjustment. And so that's what we would see this coming January.
We have to change it for 2 contracts then. I mean, if you're going to meet the September 1st deadline, it would go
Those would
into-
be on separate contracts.
Correct. Right now, we're talking about the other contract.
Okay, I'm not- again, this is a pass-through charge from Waste Management. I can't believe them turning away from the contract just based on this thing. If they would want to propose a different deadline, that is reasonable. September is really not reasonable, guys. We don't have another council meeting before now and then. And I can need a change to this. I don't think that's the appropriate thing to do. I think we ought to do due diligence and discussion. I'm willing to put forward a motion that the administrative fee goes up by 11% only, which would be more than in line with inflationary costs. But, 30% less than what it would jump with the contract going up. But I'd rather we have discussion doing it, so I'm not withdrawing my motion.
Counselor Johnson.
So is it correct to say that we could have a discussion by next September 1st for the following year, but this year would be what it is if we approve the contract as it is, as opposed to the motion?
Correct.
So you just have to put off that discussion for the next year if this motion doesn't pass.
Are we ready to vote? I guess not. Mayor Pro Tem Malloy?
So then we have, for the duration of this contract, in effect, we've never had a discussion of administrative fees. So I'm not gonna remember which week my yard waste is gonna be picked up. You're expecting that one of us is gonna remember that by September, we're gonna have a conversation on this? If we don't do something, this is just going to float and go as is. So
One thing I could, I don't know.
Go for
If we were to sign the contract as it is right now, to, David Linehan's point and your point, it's a pass-through fee. It probably, Waste Management likely doesn't care at all. When essentially we change it, as long as we give them enough time to do it. And so if we were to sign the contract as it stands right now, I'd still go to them, tomorrow effectively and say, how late can we change this administrative fee by June 1st? And likely what they are going to say is something along the lines of January or February would be fine. And then we could come back to you and discuss it in that regard. Obviously, we would be signing the contract right now that says September 1st is the deadline. So there's a chance that they would just say no.
I think the lawyer will tell you if it's not written, it doesn't exist.
Well, I think what I would say, Mayor.
Yes.
What I would say is I think Mr. Fry is totally correct that the two parties can agree to change the wording at any time. So if you're comfortable moving forward with what it says now, you can always initiate a change to that 10 7/10% at any time, as long as it gives Waste Management enough time to actually implement it. Like Mr. Fry said, I think it's just a question of, can they meet the timing that they need in order to make that change to their billing system.
Counselor Benson?
Just based on the way Waste Management has dealt with our alley issue on the fly, I don't feel like they're going to have any difficulty with us wanting to change our pass-through fee. I think Mr. Fry's analysis is good, and I don't think Waste Management is looking to be persnickety about things that don't even affect them.
Are we ready? Okay. City Administrator?
I'm getting a little nervous, and maybe it's because I'm tired. I just want to make sure I'm understanding. So what Patrick was proposing is approving the contract as it is now, and he will go discuss a contract amendment to bring forward to a future council meeting, changing that date. Those weren't the words I heard, but those are the words I want to use.
The percentage.
Exactly.
No, just changing the date.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, well, yeah, it'll be September 1st still for every following year, but then for the initial contract administration fee, it'll be, January, February.
Or
It's the contract amendment word I was looking for.
Counselor Johnson?
Yeah, it seems like it'd be a bit of a gamble either way. One of the gambles would be, would they say no, we're not willing to change anything, and now the contract is a little bit up in the air. If we approve the motion that's on the table, so that would be one risk. The other risk would be that we have the contract and they say, no, we're not willing to change anything after we have the contract. And I would feel more comfortable having the contract. I like the risk of having the contract in place and going and asking for the change tomorrow, quote unquote, tomorrow, more between those two options.
Our city clerk, Dean, would you please read back what the motion is?
Amend the contract and have the initial administration fee designed by January 2020.
Ready to vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Vote for against, so that motion does not pass.
That is,
So,
are you
Mayor
guys,
Pro Tem Holloway?
are you guys in favor of having that as a follow-on negotiation item as the city administrator stated? Yes. Okay.
Okay, so Councilor Johnson,
Move to approve the contract. Whatever the proper words are.
I second that.
there's been a motion by Councilor Johnson, second by Councilor Cotton. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the contract, say aye.
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 Any opposed, nay? And it passes. The solid waste contract adopted with waste management. So excellent. Thank you. Moving on, next item is AB 24-088, amending the consultant services agreement with Parametrics for the design of the 384th Avenue Sewer Sidewalk Project. Councilor Benson, would you please read the summary and motion?
This agenda bill seeks approval to amend an existing consultant services agreement with Parametrics Incorporated for the design of the 384th Avenue Sewer Sidewalk Project and authorize the mayor to sign the amended contract. Parametrics was awarded an engineering contract with the city in 2022 to design the 384th Avenue Sewer Sidewalk Project, yet due to unforeseen circumstances with extremely poor subgrade quality as well as permitting roadblocks, the original budgetary amount is not sufficient to see the project through to completion. Move to approve an amendment to the consultant services agreement with Parametrics Incorporated for the design of the 384th Avenue Sewer Sidewalk Project.
Second.
So moved by Councilor Goodson, second by Councilor Johnson. Amending the consultant services agreement with Parametrics.
You are.
Is there any public comment? Any person in City Hall wishing to do public comment? Not seeing any. So we have Patrick Fry, our project engineer.
Evening. I will share screen. That's not good. All right, technical difficulties. Okay. Evening. So I'm going to reference this PowerPoint that I presented to you back in May 28th, so about 2.5 months ago, concerning that 384th sewer sidewalk job, about whether we wanted to just do that sewer work or do the sewer work as well as the sidewalk work. And so you remember, we went through, we discussed all the pros and cons, how much everything's going to cost, why there are two different agenda bills that we were discussing. And you will, of course, remember this exact slide where I referenced on AB 24-068, an additional $150,000 utility money required later for construction management as well as permitting to come later. This is that later, so that's this amendment. Exactly what is included in that amendment are these items that are really hard to read, which I apologize for. But essentially, it's that when this was originally scoped as the parametrics design back in 2022, essentially you have to estimate how many working hours this project is going to take, right? Just by walking the site, you know, what unforeseen items can you expect to find on this project? And so really the original scoping exercise of the original design, which was I think around $450,000, it did not go or have any prior geotechnical exploration, did not have any survey work. We hadn't done any utility locates, or we hadn't, you know, had any consultation with King County on what the permitting expectations are going to be. And so really after geotechnical exploration is really when we reached a lot of the challenges. The soil out there is just, it's awful. Our design engineer just said it was the worst soil he's ever seen, and he's been in the business for 30 years. It has what's called blow counts of 0 for over 100 feet. That means that it just won't support anything. You know, it like you stick a hammer in there and it'll just sink for 100 feet. It's terrible soil. So you can't expect that. You can expect poor soil, but you can't expect the worst soil that you've ever seen in 30 years. And so what that led to was additional costs in geotechnical investigation. It led to additional kind of a lot of back and forth about how we're even going to support this sidewalk by that wetland. It led to critical areas field visit after deciding that the best way was putting in a wall. It led to redesigning pretty much everything, as well as more work with the county. It led to having to do drainage adjustments for the county because now we're putting fill into a wetland with that wall. It led to HEC-RAS modeling, which is, you know, how much is putting this wall in going to cause the wetland to rise. And so all of those items were unforeseen just because of that really poor soil. And the amendment is coming to you now because we didn't want to bring that forward to you if all we were going to do is just do the sewer work, because all of that is tied to the sidewalk. And so it wouldn't have made sense to bring it forward to you prior. Further, after doing utility locates, which is just essentially locating where different lines. So it's where water main is, where the sewer main is, and really you go out there and with a rod and you you know, measure exactly where it's going to be with a metal detector, or by looking at different appurtenances that will kind of tell you exactly where they are. And usually you'll go, okay, the water line is right here, sewer line now has to be 10 feet this way. In this instance, after doing utility locates, there is a high pressure or medium pressure gas line that was exactly where the storm needs to go. And so unfortunately, we had to do additional potholing out there, which is, rather than just a basic utility locate, it's actually digging in the ground and finding the exact location of the medium pressure gas line and the depth of it. And so that's expensive because you have to, you know, be digging into the road, you have to measure that depth, and you have to do that multiple times over throughout the course of the project. And so that really is the bulk of this amendment and what we're coming forward with tonight, and the reasoning behind it. That's it.
Council, do you have any questions? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Great, and the motion passes. Amending the consultant services contract with parametrics. Any further report from Parks and Public Works?
No.
Is there a report from Finance Administration?
Other than just to check, so no council meeting in 2 weeks, but I think we had other meetings scheduled
Budget.
for budget discussions.
Yes. Right, so we have our normal council committees coming up in next week.
Okay.
And then you're right, 3rd and 4th of September for special workshops.
Okay, I just wanted to remind council, don't book your anniversary dinner on the 3rd or 4th. We will have meetings in 2 weeks, a couple of meetings around budget.
Right.
And other than that, no further report from that.
Great. So I'll do the mayor's update. First of all, Chief Lynch and Administrative Coordinator Melinda Black attended the Master Public Information Officer Training hosted by the FBI LIDA, and both completed the intensive course and both are now public information officers. So congratulations to Chief Lynch and to Melinda Black. The public levy 0.1% sales and use tax was on the primary ballot and is passing with a solid 66% approval.
Wow.
So and express our sincere thanks to residents for backing this important levy. It will help fund public safety personnel by covering the expenses related to hiring, equipping, and employing these public safety professionals. We received some good news. Received about the YMCA that the Snoqualmie Pool Expansion Project has been recommended for the $1.2 million allocation for the state's Youth Recreation Facilities Grant in the 2025-2027 funding cycle. So this project was ranked number 7 in the list and should be fully funded if the funds are in the final capital budget, meaning the governor's budget. So please talk to legislatures to advocate to ensure that all the funding for these different grants are included in the governor's budget next year. With that, then, as long as it is, we do get that funding. So we appreciate the wise work on this on our behalf. Northwest Railroad, they just completed 3 weeks of programming and fun with the Day Out with Thomas. They had over 14,300 guests that came to our communities of Snoqualmie and North Bend. And they enjoyed our downtown, our restaurants and retail, and they estimated generating about nearly $2 million for our valley. So that's a lot. And Snoqualmie Days is this week, starting Friday evening and goes on through Saturday. And we starting with the firefighters, pancake breakfast, and then parade. So hopefully everyone can attend that. So. And with that, do we have any commission liaison reports? Councilor Watton.
Just an important announcement. Thursday evening at Sigello Cellars, 6 to 7 p.m. I believe we have a majority of the council being present. So we hope everyone is able to attend 6 to 7 p.m. in the lower back patio, just for discussions. No presentations.
No wine.
Wine on your own.
No host bar.
Yes, no hopes bar.
Anything else? Okay, our city administrator, you want to give us a brief update on department reports?
Don't miss this one. This one has Big N, which is always a good one to check out. But it also has the debut of our IT director Fletcher back there, his first report. So lots of good information in there about the last few months. So please check it out.
Right, thank you. So tonight we have an executive session pursuant to RCW 42.30.1101 AI to discuss with legal counsel representing this agency matters relating to agency enforcement actions, or to discuss with legal counsel representing the agency litigation or potential litigation to which agency or the governing body or a member acting in official capacity is possibly likely to become a party when the public knowledge regarding this discussion is likely to result in an adverse legal or financial consequence to the agency. Lasting approximately how long do you think? 2 minutes?
Make it 20 at least.
30?
Well, but we
That's just for
can
mine. I
always
don't know about
extend
this.
it. We can always
Okay.
extend it. So I think we need to do an hour. I'd rather do that. Extend it.
59 and a half minutes.
Because if we say 30. then we'll get it.
Should we start with, we'll start with 20. 20 minutes. And those attending would include City Attorney David Linehan, City Minister Mike Chambliss, Finance Director Drew Bate, and Captain Gary Harese. And No action is anticipated following the executive session, so council will adjourn directly from the executive session and not return to open session. The city clerk will be informed of the concluding time, which will be reflected in the meeting minutes. And so we will actually end this recording. And I don't believe there'll be anybody online attending, so. And we will come back at, take a 5-minute break. So our goal will be 9:30. Right? Thank you.